Nicole. I'm the campus organizer here at Simpson College. Give it up for Simpson. Yeah. We have been organizing for months in order to build a transformational, multi-generational, multiracial, multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-gendered movement of everyday working people to get Bernie Sanders in the White House. Let's hear it for that. And I want to give a shout out to our campus volunteers and our Australian friends visiting. Thank you so much for being here. Our hearts are with you, solidarity. Thousands of committed volunteers have been working here in Iowa, my home state, this great state, and all our efforts of knocking doors, making phone calls, talking to our friends and our neighbors are paying off. Bernie is surging. He is surging. And it's because he's the right person to lead in this moment. And also because of our efforts, right? Because of you and me and the work we're doing here together. But now it's our moment to make a strong, strong finish. And on Monday, we can seal the deal. I want to talk to you for a minute about the caucus. Has anyone heard of this caucus? Okay. It's happening on Monday at what time? Yeah, 7? Be there by 6:30. We'll get to that. I can't emphasize enough how everything hinges on us showing up in overwhelming numbers, okay? Woo! That's right. I don't know what's happening up here. Okay. So that means that everyone here needs to follow through. We need to show up on our caucus at our caucus location on Monday, on time, and ready to make Bernie Sanders presidency a reality. All right? How do we do this? It's the single most important thing we can do. And we need everyone here to commit to showing up on caucus night on Monday and not letting anything stand in your way, okay? It's very important. We know this, right? All eyes are on us. So you've got to be there at what time? 6:30 is right, because the doors are closing at 7, and if you're not in there, you're not getting in. This is very important that we show up on time, and on time means early. Okay, so right now, if you don't know your caucus location, go to berniesanders.com/Iowa and find out. This is important to do now, tomorrow, and Monday, okay? You want to definitely know your caucus location. Okay, but it doesn't stop there, right? We just can't show up. We need everyone here to call and text your people and make sure that they have a plan to show up and caucus for Bernie on Monday, all right? To make sure that they know their caucus location, to make sure they know when to arrive, to make sure that they're ready and determined. And again, if we make sure of this, we will win. 6:30, doors are closing at 7. You got that? Cool. Okay. Now, let's take some time this weekend, go through your contacts and reach out to your people. Tell them, why this is important to you. We don't want to wake up on Tuesday morning feeling regretful that we didn't make that final nudge. I don't want to feel that way. I don't know about y'all. This is it. Okay, so finally, we need everyone here to commit to doing at least one more door-knocking shift in this final home stretch, okay? Let's get it. If you've never knocked doors before, here's your chance. Here's your chance to be a part of history unfolding. Largest grassroots movement. And we can do it right here in Iowa, okay? I don't know. This is what's happening this week. I want you to be a part of it. This is a critical moment in a historic political revolution. Okay, so organizers and other volunteers are going to be walking around. Can you hold up your clipboards, please? Everyone take a minute to look around. Find an organizer with a clipboard. They are going to make sure that you can sign up for some shifts. One shift each. If you can do more, that's awesome. And we're doing a canvas right after this. So if you want to find David or Sylvia in the back, they will hook you up and we can go door knocking right now and be a part of this. Okay, so it's the final home stretch, right? This is it. And we need to do it right here in Iowa. Within the next 2 days, we can set in motion the political revolution that we know we need. The political revolution that is going to bring us Medicare for all. The political revolution that is going to give us a Green New Deal. free public college, and bringing us the revolution that working class people need. So let's get it. We need to do this right now, all right? It's our time. It's the home stretch. Let's finish strong. Big us. Let's do this. Let's go. Thank you so much. All right, enjoy the day. See you on those doors.
Now, welcome to the stage, Representative from Washington, Pramila Jayapal.
Hello, Iowa. Are you ready? Are you really ready? So I am really thrilled to be here, and I want to tell you why I think Bernie Sanders is the president that is going to lead us forward. And I know we have a lot of supporters in this room, and so I know you all know this, but we got to say it. We got to say it over and over again. So first of all, Bernie Sanders is steadfast. We know when Bernie Sanders says something that he believes in, he is going to fight for that thing that he believes in, and he's not going to back off. Is that right? And we know that Bernie Sanders has a clarity about what is wrong with our systems. Not just small things, but institutionally what is wrong with our systems in front of us. And he has a clarity about the policy prescriptions for how we're going to fix that. Is that right? And we know that Bernie Sanders knows that if we're going to bring about those big revolutionary changes, those ideas like Medicare for All, and yes, I'm the proud sponsor of the House bill for Medicare for All, then we are going to need a movement to make that happen. And we have to move past the myth of the likely voter to the truth of every voter. And that means expanding our electorate and bringing more people in and organizing. Is that right? So I want to talk about organizing for a minute, because organizing is central to any political revolution. And really, that's what you're doing around these caucuses. You're organizing, and that's what we're doing across the country. And that's what Bernie has been doing for a very long time. You know, when people say that these ideas are progressive, I think being a progressive just means that you are the first to the most courageous idea, the truth that needs to be said, the revolution that needs to be expressed, and the movement that needs to be built. Is that right? And without progressives who agitate and tell hard truths, because that's what happens when you determine that something is wrong. You have to tell a hard truth about what is wrong and how to fix it. We wouldn't be getting the kind of change that we need. And so if you doubt that organizing and movement building can really do what we are talking about, I want to remind you about a few things. 25 years ago, criminalizing immigrants was actually the thing that both political parties thought was the right thing to do. In the 1990s, that is what was put into place, criminalizing of immigrants. And last year, 500,000 people turned out into the streets to say that kids being separated from their parents is wrong, to say that putting 56,000 immigrants into incarceration, into jails across this country every single night is wrong, and that we need humane immigration reform. "17 years ago, there were millions of people in the streets fighting to say that going to war with Iraq was wrong. And 2 days ago in the House of Representatives, we passed a bill that says we repeal that authorization of use of military force that was used to go to war in Iraq, because we know that endless wars are the wrong answer for the United States of America. 10 years ago, people told us that a $15 minimum wage was crazy. Oh my God, that's going to ruin our economy. Well, guess what? 6 years ago, Seattle, my hometown, became the first city in the country, the first major city, I got some Seattleites here, excellent. First major city in the country to pass a $15 minimum wage. Last summer on the House of Representatives floor, we passed a $15 minimum wage. People don't even think about it today. It's not even asked about on the debate stage because now what we need to move to is a living wage. 4 years ago, when Bernie Sanders was on the campaign trail for president, he was talking about Medicare for all, and people said, oh my God, that doesn't make any sense. It's going to cost too much, forgetting that right now, if we stick with the healthcare system we have, we will pay $55 trillion over the next 10 years. So he kept building that movement with all of us across the country. And last year, in the House of Representatives, we had, for the first time in the history of the United States, 4 major hearings on Medicare for all, and we are moving that bill forward. And look, I'm here as the proud mother of a non-binary child, and I am going to use those they, them pronouns in the House of Representatives because we need to make sure that everybody understands we want your whole self. Not just half of yourself, we want your whole self and your expression of who you are. So our vision of justice is a revolution of the systems that we have in front of us. It is not just nibbling around the edges. You know, Dr. Martin Luther King in his I Have a Dream speech, it's a quote that's not often quoted, but in that speech, he said, now is not the time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. So we have to understand that the systems in front of us have been built in a way that does not serve working people. And if we are going to have a country that is different from the one we have now, that does not allow for 3 people in the United States of America, 2 of whom live in my home state, to have the same wealth as 160 million Americans. We are not going to allow that to happen. But if we want that to be true, we are going to have to build the movement to take on the fossil fuel interests, the pharmaceutical drug manufacturers, the private insurance companies, the private equity companies, the billionaires, and the biggest corporations that are benefiting off of standing on your future. Everybody deserves a just future in this country. I came here when I was 16 years old by myself, because my parents had very little money, but they believed that America was the place that I was going to have a real future and real opportunity. And now I get to be in Congress, but that means we got to pay it forward, because I look around and I see too many kids who don't even have that opportunity to think about a higher education without coming out with mountains of debt. That's why Bernie Sanders is going to cancel college debt and make sure that everybody that goes on to get a higher education can do it in an affordable way. I look around and I have a constituent who told me that he gets his health care paid for through his employer, but he hates his job. His payments are $40,000 just for the drugs that he needs. And he's so sick he can't go to work, but he has to go to work because if he loses his job, he's not going to have health care. That is not choice, my friends. Choice is getting health care when you need it, going to whatever doctor you want, no co-pays, premiums, or deductibles, and making sure that everybody has the same care, not one kind of care for the wealthy and another kind of care for everyone else. The same kind of care that Medicare for all will guarantee. But most of all, I think about the fact that we have a sense of community in our movement. You know, when I was running in 2016 for the state senate, I had my campaign slogan was "Not me, we," but it was not grammatically correct, as you all know. And so for Bernie in his movement, both to do it grammatically correctly, but also to say, me, not me, us, our community of love and generosity, of deep feeling that we are all better off when we're all better off. That's what we're striving for. It isn't just about what we do, it's about how we interact with each other. So when Bernie says, think about the person you don't know and think about how their life can be better, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about reaching out your hands to the people that may not look like you, that you may not know, but the reality is we want policies and an economy and a country that lifts all of our boats, not just those yachts for the few. Correct? So, Bernie is the president that won't back down. Bernie is the president that's going to tell the truth and fight for it. Bernie is the president that's not going to put his finger in the air and look at which way the polls are moving to determine what he's going to say. He is going to lead from the place of leadership. He is going to be a leader in the Oval Office that says to everybody, this is how we stand up for our values. And that is why I'm so proud to support Bernie Sanders for President of the United States. Now, I got to tell you one last thing, because Iowa, no pressure, but we're all looking at you, and you have 2 days. You've got 2 days to invite people into the movement. You've got 2 days to show people the excitement of this loving, generous community that we have, that believes we don't have to accept what is in front of us, the injustices that are in front of us, but actually can fight for what we believe in. And here's the thing. What happens in Iowa does not stay in Iowa. We win Iowa for Bernie. We win New Hampshire for Bernie. The momentum carries us through the next several states, and in the end, it carries us all the way to the White House so that Senator Bernard Sanders can become President of the United States. Thank you all so much. Let's win this thing. Thank you.
And now, welcome to the stage, Representative from Minnesota, Ilhan Omar.
Hello, hello, hello. Are you all feeling the urgency of now? This is a critical moment. It's actually a very crucial time in the election. We are only 48 hours away from filling in to go and caucus. And it looks like momentum is on our side. How are you feeling about that? I know you might have noticed the attacks on Bernie have become more and more desperate. Have you seen it? You might hear a lot of labels being thrown out. Bernie is too radical. Bernie is too dangerous. Bernie is too polarizing, divisive. You might even hear the S word, socialism. But make no mistake, these are the same attacks the status quo has used throughout history to demonize multiracial working class movements. Because if you go back to the civil rights movement in the 1960s, you will find the same exact labels were thrown at Dr. Martin Luther King and those who were marching for justice. When Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus, she was called an agitator. When Dr. Martin Luther King demanded an end to segregation and fair wages for all workers, he was labeled a radical. When he criticized and stood up against militarization and war in Vietnam, he was labeled a communist sympathizer and, yes, a socialist. And by the end of his life, when he mobilized and founded the Poor People's Campaign, which was a campaign to demand an investment in anti-poverty efforts and the construction of 500,000 new public housing units, a guaranteed income, and full employment. They called him dangerous. And when Barack Obama ran for president, they found new labels. Those labels actually were very fascinating to me because they called him Muslim, and they said he was African-born, as if those things are something to be scared of or ashamed. Because actually today, they get to have a Muslim and African-born in Congress. Who's a proud American and who is very excited in building a working class coalition that seeks to bring people together across superficial divisions. These special interests who work and thrive off of division will inevitably fight us at every single turn. The core of Bernie's campaign has been that we must be willing to fight for someone we don't know. We must be willing to fight not only for ourselves, but for us. And the status quo is terrified of Bernie presidency. They're afraid of someone who can unite across race and religion. They're afraid of having a president who will and believes immigrants are humans, who deserve to be welcomed into our country as they seek the American dream. They fear a president who recognizes healthcare as a human right and who will fight to make Medicare for all a reality. They fear a president who puts the fate of our entire planet ahead of profits of the fossil fuel industry and who will be excited to end the welfare to the fossil fuel industry. They fear a president who believes public education is a public good and no one should be crippled with a lifetime of debt by getting a higher education. And most of all, they fear a president who puts peace and diplomacy ahead of militarization. These goals are not separate. I believe, like Bernie, our foreign policy is domestic policy. We currently spend $700 billion in funding endless wars and wasteful Pentagon spending, which is more than half of all discretionary spending. Do you know what we can do if we invested some of that money here at home? Let's just take 20 billion of that money. We could provide health care for every single uninsured American. We could provide renewable energy for every single household in these United States of America. we could double the amount of elementary school teachers in this country. With just $26 billion, we could fully end homelessness in this country. And do you know what $21 billion could get us? An end to childhood hunger in this country. Because the reality is we do not suffer from lack of resources in this country. We suffer from lack of will. We suffer from greed. And we know that the only answer to corporate power taking down Bernie is people power lifting him up all the way to the White House. Because what Bernie fights for is the same as what Martin Luther King was talking about. Martin Luther King said, "America, all we ask of you is to live up to what you say on paper." That's what Bernie's campaign has been about. An America that lives up to what it says on paper. An America that lives up to what it says in orientation tapes that they show to refugees that are coming to America. Bernie's America is the America we all deserve, and one that I am willing to fight for, and I hope you all will join us in fighting for that America. With your help, in the next 24 hours, Iowa will make history. Iowa will be able to set a domino effect that will not only guarantee a win for Bernie here in Iowa, but will take him all the way to the White House. When we believe in ourselves and what we are able to do for ourselves, others will join us in believing in our success. Bernie believes in his ability to lead our country into a future that is bright for all of us. And I know that we all believe in Bernie to make sure and guarantee that future. Thank you so much for coming out. And thank you, Iowa.
And now, welcome to the stage, your future First Lady of the United States, Dr. Jane Sanders.
Hi, everybody. Hello, Indianola. It's great to be here, and thank you all for being here at Simpson College. It's really an honor to be here to introduce my husband, Bernie Sanders. Now, I'm going to take a little prerogative, wife's prerogative, and talk a little bit about him before he comes out from a personal point of view, and also, since we've worked together for so long, from a political point of view as well. I met Bernie in 1981 when he was running for mayor, and I was a community organizer. The neighborhood groups I was working with organized a debate, and when I heard him speak the first time, I felt that he spoke to my heart, that he embodied everything that I ever believed in. I can tell you today that almost 40 years later, he still does. During this campaign, I've recognized that response from people when they first hear Bernie speak. And I see it in their stance, in their looks. They come very serious and intellectual. And I see such a softening of, wait, he gets me. He gets the struggles that I'm facing. And more often than not, we see a lot more supporters at the end of a speech than we do at the beginning. So hopefully that continues on and quite a bit on Monday. It just makes me incredibly proud to be at his side. As someone who's known him for all this time, I can tell you he is as honest as the day is long and as consistent as the sun rising. I think it's important, particularly at this time, that voters know that, because we really need a president, at this point especially, that means what he says what he means, and carries through. And that is Bernie. It always has been. The college student who got arrested in college in Chicago for protesting segregated housing is the president, Bernie Sanders, that will be dealing with our broken criminal justice system, ending institutional racism, and creating a sane, humane immigration policy. The Bernie Sanders who, as mayor, was frugal, very frugal with taxpayers' money, yet created some new priority departments, a youth office, which I headed up, an arts council, a women's council, and a community and economic development office to support small businesses and incubator businesses and entrepreneurs, will be the president, Bernie Sanders, who cancels student debt, who delivers on a Green New Deal and transitions our economy to renewable energy and effectively fights climate change. The Bernie Sanders who in Congress fought the bipartisan efforts to cut Social Security will be the president, Bernie Sanders, who fights not just to stop the cuts, but to expand Social Security so our seniors can retire in dignity. The Bernie Sanders who showed the courage and judgment to oppose and vote against the Iraq War will be the president, Bernie Sanders, who ends the endless wars and focuses on rebuilding our international alliances and have a foreign policy built on peace and cooperation. And the Bernie Sanders whose campaigns are funded totally by grassroots donations will be the President Bernie Sanders who overturns Citizens United. In other words, Bernie's long and consistent track record as a champion of the multiracial, multi-generational working class is unflinching. That's why I and you know that amidst the continued onslaught of special interests, corporate lobbying, and a corrupt political system, that he will stand steadfast in fighting for us. We trust him because of the moral clarity that he has demonstrated over the course of his lifetime. This is, again, tremendously important right now because we have, well, I don't have to go into what we have. We all know what we have. But Bernie is a candidate that the current president will not be able to vilify as inauthentic or hypocritical. With Bernie, what you see is what you get, and that is a huge advantage. He is the candidate to beat Donald Trump. For a while, Bernie's ideas were seen as extreme or radical, and that's no longer the case, thank goodness. I mean, and it's not just due to Bernie, it's due to all the people who are working across this country on issues of importance, Medicare for all, Green New Deal, all the issues that we talk about. You've changed people's minds, and people are starting to realize we can do better as a country. His agenda is supported by those of us, or many people, millions of Americans, who are fed up with a political and economic establishment that does very well for the people on top, but leaves many people behind, working longer hours for lower wages and exorbitant prices for healthcare and education. It's supported by those who know that it's not radical to ask for universal health care like every other industrialized nation in the world. It's supported by those who know we must not hold back the potential, the vast potential of our young people with $1.5 trillion in student debt. And Bernie's agenda is supported by the majority of Americans who know we have no more time to waste in effectively fighting climate change. During this campaign, Bernie and I have traveled the country, and we've talked to a lot of people, we've listened to their experiences, we've heard their hardships, and we've learned about their dreams. Clearly, we are a country at a crossroads. With our unique diversity, our yearning for a better future, but also our sadness at a political and economic system that is failing us. We have come face to face with the inequalities, the poverty, the racism, and injustice that continues to hold our nation back from its potential. But here's the good news. We're no longer on the fringe of politics. We're working together to change it. Our job now is to reject thinking small in this great country when we have the courage to think big, when we have the courage to stand up united to fight for the promises of America. None of our ambitions are out of our reach. We are America. We went to the moon 50 years ago. Let's make our moonshot justice for this generation. Transformative change will take place if we stand together, united by a common purpose, a coherent vision, and a robust policy framework. And with President Bernie Sanders fighting for the promise of working people across the country, we will get this done. He will never bow down to any corporate elite or moneyed interests. That's the kind of president we need, the kind who will not only make promises, but make change, the kind who will not only raise hopes, but will fulfill them, the kind that will not only praise peace, but attain it. If we stand together, we are on the verge of an historic victory that will transform this country. So my request of you is to keep door knocking, keep phone calling, keep texting. It's not just about you caucusing, it's your friends and your family and your neighbors and your coworkers. Don't just ask them to caucus, bring them to caucus. Have a party before, have a party after, but make sure people show up. We are in this together, and together we can create real and lasting change, not only for our country today, but for future generations. Let's do it. Now I have the distinct honor of introducing the next President of the United States, my husband, Senator Bernie Sanders.
I wanted to begin by telling you what this campaign is about. And it is about my 7 grandchildren, 2 of whom are here today. This is Ella, and what's your name? That's Dylan, and their dad, David. So this campaign is about these kids, all the children of America, and in fact, all the children of the world. That is what we are fighting for. Let me begin by thanking Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. As some of you may know, she is a co-chair of the House Progressive Caucus, has been a leading advocate for working people, is the lead author of the House legislation for Medicare for All. Pramila, thanks so much for what you're doing, and thanks for your role in this campaign. And let me also thank a woman who I think is maybe the bravest member of the U.S. House, and that is Representative Ilhan Omar. And last but not least, I want to thank my wife, Jane, not only for being in Iowa today and last week when I couldn't be here, but for being able to work with her for almost 40 years now, actually on issues of justice. So Jane, thank you very much. And let me thank all of you for being out today. Our campaign is about two fundamental issues. Issue number one is we must defeat, and we will defeat, the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. This is a president who is not just a pathological liar, not just the president who is running a corrupt administration, but he is a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a xenophobe, and a religious bigot. And that's his good part. Then we can talk about some other things. And if anybody listened to the impeachment trial of the last week, you really get the very strong feeling that this is a president and an administration that believes they are above the law. Hey, I'm president. I don't have to worry about the elected officials in Congress. I don't have to worry about the media because they're enemies of the people. It's all fake news. I'm going to cozy on up to dictators all over the world. I'm going to lie thousands and thousands of times during my administration. Well, I would suggest that whether you are a conservative or a progressive, no matter what your political view may be, we do not want a president who has contempt for the Constitution, contempt for the rule of law, contempt for democracy. And I believe very strongly, and no disrespect to my Democratic colleagues who are competing for the nomination. They're friends of mine. But I believe that we are the strongest campaign to defeat Trump. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you as bluntly as I can why I believe we are the strongest campaign. Not to say that we're the only campaign. And by the way, let me say this so there is no misunderstanding. And I believe I speak for all of the other Democrats competing in this primary. Certainly, I hope that we're going to win. But if we do not win, we will support the winner. And I know that every other candidate will do the same. We are united in understanding that we must defeat Donald Trump. So why do we believe that we are the strongest campaign? Two fundamental reasons. Number one, to defeat Donald Trump, who will be a very formidable opponent for a number of reasons. We need to have the largest voter turnout in American history. That's just a fact. If it is a low turnout election, Trump will win. And I believe that our campaign is the campaign of energy, is the campaign of excitement, is the campaign that can bring millions of people into the political process who normally do not vote. Our campaign is working as hard as we can to reach out to working class people who are so disillusioned and alienated from the political process that many of them have given up and are not participating. And we're reaching out to them, trying to bring them into the political process. And we are reaching out aggressively to the young people of this country. The young people who are the most progressive young generation in the history of America. And what we are saying to them, if you are interested, as you are, in climate change, if you're interested in fighting racism and sexism and homophobia, as you are, if you're interested in making sure that you and your brothers and sisters can afford to go to college and not leave college deeply in debt, we are the campaign you should be part of. So I think we are the strongest campaign to defeat Trump because we are developing the strongest grassroots movement in this campaign. And I'll give you an example of how strong our grassroots movement is right here in Iowa, not to mention New Hampshire and the rest of the country. My understanding, and Misty is right there, correct me if I am wrong, that's our campaign director here in Iowa. Misty, we are going to knock on 500,000 doors in the month of January and the first few days of February. Is that correct? Yes. All right. Now, I don't know how many doors you got in Iowa, but you only got 3+ million people. So that's a lot of doors. But that's what our volunteers have been doing. And we're doing this all over the country. And that is what we need to do in order to win against Trump. Now, the second reason I believe that we are the strongest campaign to defeat Trump is we are going to expose his hypocrisy, his lies. Trump said that he was a different type of Republican, that he was going to take on the establishment. He was a champion of the working class of America. Well, I say to President Trump, if you're a champion of the working class of America, you don't try to throw 32 million people off the health care that they have. If you are a champion of working people, you don't write a tax bill which gives 83% of the benefits to the top 1%. If you are a champion of the working class of this country, you don't introduce two budgets, which calls for massive cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, education, and Social Security. That's not being a champion. So I think we are going to defeat Trump. In fact, I know we are going to defeat Trump because we have the agenda that speaks to the needs of working families. Now, what is that agenda? What are we talking about? It ain't hard to understand. You know, media tries to deflect us away from the fundamental issues, and I hope very much as this campaign progresses that we're all able to stay focused on the most important issues. What are they? You live today, I live, in the richest country in the history of the world. But most people don't know that because almost all new income and wealth goes to the top 1%. So here's a radical idea. What about having a government and an economy that works for working people, not just wealthy campaign contributors? What about ending a situation in which three people own more wealth than the bottom half of American society? Where 49% of all new income goes to the top 1%, while half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck And tonight, some 500,000 Americans are homeless, sleeping out on the streets or in emergency shelters. What about creating an economy that works for all, not just the wealthy and the powerful? What does that mean? It means that if you work 40 hours a week in this country, you should not be living in poverty. We're going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, at least $15 an hour. It means equal pay for equal work so that women don't make 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. It means we're going to make it easier for workers to join unions, not harder. It means that we understand the importance of education for our young people. And that means that we are going to make public colleges and universities tuition-free so everybody who has the ability and desire can get a higher education. And if Congress, against my vote, could bail out the crooks on Wall Street whose illegal behavior 11 years ago nearly destroyed our economy, if Trump and his friends can give over $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1% large corporations, we can cancel all student debt in America with a modest tax on Wall Street speculation. And I'll tell you what else, why our agenda is appealing to the American people. Because they know that health care is a human right, not a privilege. They know that there is something fundamentally wrong when we are spending twice as much per capita on health care as do the people of any other country, twice as much as the Canadians, the Europeans, and yet 87 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured. 30,000 Americans die each year because they don't get to a doctor when they should, because they don't have insurance. We pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Can anybody explain to me how the same exact medicine, in some cases insulin, used for diabetes, cost 1/10 the price in Canada than it does in the United States of America? We're paying 10 times more, and it's not just insulin. You have a pharmaceutical industry which is not only greedy, it is corrupt. Our administration will stand up to them. The American people will not continue paying the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. When we talk about Medicare for All, what we are talking about is building on the most popular health insurance program in this country, which is Medicare. But Medicare has its limitations. So we want to improve it and expand it for all. What are we talking about? What are we talking about? What we're talking about is expanding Medicare to cover dental care, because last I heard oral health was a health care issue. Cover hearing aids so that elderly people are able to interact with their kids and their community. Covering eyeglasses and covering home health care so that the elderly and the disabled are not forced to go into nursing homes. And what Medicare for All is, and I say this, I go into this virtually every speech I give, because we're taking on the healthcare industry, who made $100 billion in profits last year, who will spend enormous amounts of money lying about Medicare for All distorting what Medicare for All is. So let me be very clear. What Medicare for All means is no more premiums. Not for you as workers, not for your employers. No more co-payments, so you can walk into a doctor's office and not have to fork out $50 or $100, which you may not have. And I'll tell you what else Medicare for All ends. It ends the absurd concept of deductibles. You know, people spend a fortune for health insurance, and then they find that, well, before they can go to a doctor's office, they got to take $5,000 or $10,000 out of their own pocket before their insurance kicks in. That ain't insurance. All right? We're going to end all out-of-pocket expenses. So what Medicare for All means, we expand Medicare. You go to any doctor you want. You go to any hospital that you want. You do not take out your wallet. You do not take out your credit card. It is publicly funded. Now, I am asked, reasonably so, how are you going to pay for it? That's a good question, fair question. But let's also ask how we pay for it today. How do we pay for health insurance today? Well, we pay for it through outrageously high premiums. In this room, there are people paying $1,000 a month for premiums. I've talked to people who pay $1,500 a month, $1,700 a month. And then there's the co-payments. And then there's the out-of-pocket expenses. The truth is that the average family in America makes about $60,000 a year. That family is paying 20% of their income, $12,000 a year for health care. And their employer is paying even more. So let me just guarantee you, because we're going to do away with the profiteering of the insurance companies and the drug companies. We're going to have one simple, non-complicated system for all rather than thousands, which will save us hundreds of billions of dollars in administration. The average American on the Medicare for All will pay substantially less for health care than they are paying today. Now, we have a president who embarrasses us almost every day. But in one area where he is doing a major disservice, it's not just to the American people, it's not only to our children and grandchildren, but it is to people all over the world. And that is his refusal to understand that not only is climate change real, but climate change is already causing devastating problems in our country and around the world. So let me make a radical proposition to you. As President of the United States, I will listen to science. And what that means is that we have a very short window of opportunity to effectively combat climate change and prevent irreparable damage to our country and to the planet. So let me be very clear and say it loudly and proudly. I say to the fossil fuel industry that your short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. And by moving toward the concept of a Green New Deal, we can create up to 20 million good-paying union jobs as we transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energies like wind, solar, geothermal, and others. And I want to congratulate Iowa. You are one of the leaders in this country in wind, all right? And we've got to be doing this all over the country. not just for our generation, but more importantly, for our kids and future generations. We have a moral responsibility to make certain that the planet we leave future generations is healthy and is habitable. And let me also tell you, this problem becomes more complicated because it's not just an American issue. We could do all the right things tomorrow, we wouldn't solve the problem. So as your president, I would see my responsibility as reaching out to the people in China, in Russia, in India, in Pakistan, Brazil, all over the world, and making it clear that as a planet, we have got to stand together. And maybe, just maybe, instead of spending $1.8 trillion every single year on weapons of destruction designed to kill each other, maybe, just maybe, we can pool our resources, come together, and fight our common enemy, which is climate change. And when we talk about an agenda that works for the American people and that brings people together, it is imperative that we undertake massive reforms of a broken and racist criminal justice system. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. We should not have more people in jail than countries like China, 4 times our size. So my promise to you is that we will, as an administration, be investing in our young people, in jobs and education, rather than more jails and incarceration. That we will end private prisons and detention centers. That we will end the horrifically destructive so-called war on drugs. And on day one, you know, there are some things you can do by executive order as president. Some things you need legislation. One of the things that you can do by executive order is decriminalize marijuana, and that's what I intend to do for every state in this country on day one in the White House. And the other issue that means a lot to me as the son of an immigrant. Some of you know my dad came to this country at the age of 17 with no money, couldn't speak a word of English, had limited education, as a matter of fact. So this issue of immigration reform is personal for me. And as president, on day one, we will end the demonization of the undocumented in this country. On day one, we will sign an executive order which restores the legal status of the 1.8 million young people and their families eligible for the DACA program. Under our administration, no federal agent will be grabbing babies from the arms of their mothers and throwing children into cages. And I believe we can do what the American people want us to do, and that is pass comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. You know, all over this country, people ask the questions. Why are our needs, whether they're economic, whether they're social, racial, whatever they are, why are they being ignored by the Congress? And maybe the clearest example that I can give you is the issue of gun safety. Every American, you're a conservative Republican, you are a progressive Democrat, you're an independent, you're a moderate, whatever you are. Your stomach turns when you turn on the TV and you hear about another mass shooting. And it's not just the number of people we are losing to guns in this country. It is the fear that children all over this country have. I was in New Hampshire a few months ago, never forget it. And a woman says, Bernie, what am I supposed to tell my 11-year-old daughter who wants me to buy her a bulletproof backpack for Christmas? All right. I was in Iowa. I can't remember what town it was. And this kid looked like a football player to me, a really big kid, 6'2", 6'3", and he says, I got to tell you, Senator, that the kids in my school are very nervous about the possibility of something terrible happening. And kids, as you know, all over America undergo these drills for emergencies. All right? We have got to do everything that we possibly can to combat gun violence in America. And the most important point that I will make to you in that regard is that our administration will listen to the American people, not be dictated by the NRA. And that means universal background checks. It means ending the gun show loophole, ending the so-called straw man provision. I'll tell you what else it means. What we are seeing in America in recent years, kind of an evolution on this issue, something I believed in for decades, but the American people now understand, whether it's rural states like Iowa or Vermont, urban areas like Chicago and New York, people understand that we have got to end the sale and distribution of assault weapons in this country. Now, as a United States Senator, I am on the floor of the Senate a lot. Last week, I was on the floor of the Senate a whole lot. And, you know, the floor of the Senate is the place where senators make speeches. And I hear very often from my Republican conservative colleagues their mantra about how they believe in small government, how they believe in getting government off the backs of the American people. You've all heard that one or two times. And I say to those conservative Republicans that if you believe in getting the government off the backs of the American people, please understand that it is women who have the right to control their own bodies, not the government. So don't talk to me, I say to my Republican colleagues, don't talk to me about small government. Don't talk to me about freedom. Don't talk to me about getting government off the backs when you intend to tell every woman in America what she can do with her own body. And my promise to you is, number one, we will codify Roe v. Wade. We'll put it into law. Number two, we will expand funding for Planned Parenthood. And number three, I will never nominate anybody to the U.S. Supreme Court or the federal courts who is not 100% Roe v. Wade. Now, I think as everybody knows in Iowa and throughout this country, this 2020 election is the most consequential in modern American history. Maybe you can argue in American history, I don't know. Enormously consequential. What we are talking about is the future of American democracy. Do we have an administration that thinks they are above the law? They can do whatever they want. They can lie. They can obstruct Congress, prevent oversight from Congress, disrespect our Constitution, which talks about 3 equal branches of government. Do we continue having an administration that ignores the global threat of climate change? Do we have an administration that wants to throw more and more people off of the health insurance they have, that wants to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid? Or do we begin in a new direction? That is what this campaign is about. And this 2020 campaign begins right here in Iowa on Monday night. And let me say this as somebody who has been all over the state of Iowa, that I know that the people of Iowa accept that very significant responsibility in a serious way. I am quite sure that there are people here today who have been to hear other candidates, and that's a good thing. People are sitting here trying to think, who is the best candidate? What's the best way forward for this country? You're taking your democratic responsibilities enormously seriously, and I applaud you for that. But let me just say this. In this consequential year, it all begins in Iowa at Caucus on Monday evening. My own view is, as I've stated to you, that of course we have got to defeat Trump, but we have to do more than that. We have to have the courage, and it ain't easy, to take on the greed of Wall Street, where you got 6 banks that have financial assets of more than $10 trillion. Enormous power. We have to take on the insurance companies who are perpetuating a system designed to make profits for the rich, while so many of our people are uninsured or underinsured. We have got to take on the drug companies who are corrupt, rip us off every single day. We're going to have to take on the fossil fuel industry and tell them that we will not allow them to continue to destroy this planet. We have to take on the military-industrial complex, because we are now spending more money on defense than the next 10 nations combined, and we continue to find ourselves in never-ending wars. And we need a foreign policy which is based on trying to end war and deal with conflict through diplomacy, not bombs and missiles. So that is all that is at stake. Nothing less than the future of this country, maybe the future of the world. Other than that, not a very important election. And let me say this from a personal political point of view. On Monday night, we will know very, very early who wins the Democratic caucus. If the voter turnout is low, we're going to lose. Simple as all that. If the voter turnout is high, if people throughout the state are prepared to come out, not just to defeat Trump, but to transform this country, if working people and young people and all people who believe in justice, economic justice, social justice, racial justice, environmental justice, if they come out in large numbers, we're going to win this caucus. So today, from the bottom of my heart and very humbly, I am here to ask you to please come out and caucus for us on Monday night. As my wife said, bring your family, bring your friends. Let us see on Monday night, in this consequential year in American history, let us see Iowa having the largest caucus turnout in the history of this great state. Thank you all very much.